Reagan administration. In this segment, I asked Paul about a quote from Attorney General Eric Holder, who said, "If you do bring a criminal charge on too big to fail banks, it will have a negative impact on the national economy." Here's what he had to say about that dubious quote.
It's the theme of the entire administration, because essentially Wall Street is a very powerful entity. It elects the Congress, the president, and so they do its bidding. Not only that, Aaron, look, who have been the Treasury secretaries in the 21st century? Look how many of them are Wall Street or Goldman Sachs. They are the very people who caused the crisis, who then come into the Treasury. Look who the Board of Governors of the New York Fed is. It's, again, the big money banks. Look who are the financial regulatory officials in the federal government. It's former Goldman Sachs executives. So, of course, they're not going to find themselves guilty. And neither is Eric Holder.
It sounds very true. I mean, and they also don't want to see any of their friends go to jail. But the connection between Goldman and you know, the administration, any administration, I should say, is pretty epic. But here's my question to you. Why do you think Eric Holder would have the audacity to say something like that? If we all think it's true, what made him say it? Is it that obvious that he doesn't even feel he should keep his thoughts to himself?
Well, everything they say is a lie. I mean, you know, what's the difference between what he said and the claim that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction or Iran has nukes? So I think, on the whole, that they tell you what you're supposed to believe, and when the government lays down a line like that, the media doesn't want to go against it, at least not the American print and TV media. RT is a little bit outside that system and takes more risk in offending the government. But you're not going to get the rest of the media or the financial press to jump on him for something like that. They just go along. He's simply telling them what the line is.
Absolutely. Now, one of the contenders for Holder's job is SEC head Mary Jo White. And apparently, as a lawyer, White represented former B of A chief executive Ken Lewis, JP Morgan Chase, Deloitte & Touche, and former Goldman Sachs director and insider trader Raj Gupta. So how can we expect her to be impartial as an SEC head or as an attorney general?
No, you can't. She's just part of the inside group that's responsible for all the trouble. Remember, Aaron, wasn't long ago before one of her main prosecutors at his retirement said he was prevented by the SEC political appointees from prosecuting the criminals in the banking system. And he was talking about her. So it's, you know, Congress goes along with it. It's a rotten, corrupt system. It's not going to change.
Seems like that, sadly. Now, you've probably heard about the secret Fed tapes. Now, a former Fed regulator, Carmen Segarra, alleges that she was fired for rocking the boat in the Fed's hands-off handling of Goldman Sachs, and now she has the tape recordings to prove it. So are you surprised how brazenly subservient the tapes make the Fed seem to Goldman Sachs?
Not anymore. I'm not. I would have been 30 years ago, but not today. I mean, there's not a whole lot of difference between Goldman Sachs and the Fed. And it's just more evidence, isn't it, that no truth can come out about the crimes of the financial system. And having the evidence, it doesn't help her.
I mean,
they've destroyed a career. They'll ruin her. They'll, you know, to tell the truth in the United States is a reckless act.
I mean, that's a very sad reality. But I have to say, maybe it's because I'm at the age where it would have surprised you, but I was shocked at how brazen those tapes were. Specifically, how much it seemed just like kids at a high school cafeteria trying to get in with the cool kids, those being Goldman Sachs. It just seemed like, oh, don't make them upset. It was really, really mind-blowing to me, and I recommend everyone check them out if they haven't heard them. But you know, Segarra's lawsuit was dismissed in April by a judge who, get this, before taking the bench, worked for white shoe New York law firm Davis Polk & Wardwell, which is a registered lobbyist for Wall Street Trade Association, SIFMA, and a firm that has represented the New York Fed. And also, get this, her husband, the judge, was still with Davis Polk when the suit was dismissed and had just received a retainer from Goldman Sachs, which is a long-term Davis Polk client. So how can this huge conflict of interest not raise any red flags?
Well, the system is so corrupt now that, in fact, it hasn't been held accountable since when? You know, no aspect of it, not just the financial aspect, but no aspect. The United States has been at war for 93% of the 21st century. It's all based on lies. No one's been held accountable. So they're not going to hold accountable the people who make the donations to the political campaigns. No, they're not going to do that. Clearly, the lawsuit that the Fed whistleblower brought was put before a judge that would rule against it. So that's just the way the system works now. I don't think there's any possibility of holding any of the elite accountable.
You know, you say now, and we all have this kind of nostalgia for a past time, but do you think it was not very similar during the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts when they were ruling the world? Do we not see the same thing?
Well, in some ways, but not the same way. They could use old board networks, and they could use connections, and they could support the policies of the president in order to get his backing. But they didn't have the kind of power and control they have now. What's really remarkable is how they have come back despite all of the New Deal financial regulation. They got rid of that, beginning with Clinton's second term and going through George W. Bush's first term. They simply wiped out everything that had made the system accountable. And so they're back now to where they were, except they're also alternate between being the head of Goldman Sachs and the head of the Treasury. So it's worse. It's a much worse situation.
That was Paul Craig Roberts, chairman of the Institute for Political Economy and former assistant secretary to the Treasury for the Reagan administration.